Good evening all. My name is Michael Guerin, and for those who do not know me, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of AgForce Queensland Farmers Limited. I'm speaking on behalf and with the full authority of the AgForce Board tonight. Firstly, thank you for your time this afternoon at short notice. I know from many conversations I've had since we sent out the meeting request yesterday that many on this call have had to put aside other important activity to be with us, and have done so without knowing what we're about to discuss. It is my belief that the conversation we're about to have is important enough to have asked this indulgence of you, but in any event, I'm happy to be judged by you on that following the call, and as we come to understand the enormity of what sits right in front of us now. This afternoon's conversation is about two things: the interactions between those two things, and what we now understand to be the implications of changes that are about to be put through the Queensland Parliament. Those two things are, firstly, the Environmental Protection, Great Barrier Reef Protection Measures and Other Legislation Amendment Bill 2019, and secondly, the Grazing and Grains Best Management Practice, or BMP programs. In this conversation, I want to do 5 things. Firstly, introduce the above two items briefly to give context for those who are not familiar with either. Secondly, describe the implications of the new bill as it relates to our Best Management Practice program and our industry more generally following completion of the committee process related to that bill. Thirdly, briefly overview the two broad options we have before us and explain which way we are moving and why. Fourthly, talk through what we have put in place to support all of industry, members of AgForce, and Best Management Practice participants from the end of this initial call tonight. And lastly, outline our understanding of what is at stake. So to item 1, the two items. Firstly, a brief on the Environmental Protection, Great Barrier Reef Protection Measures and Other Legislation Amendment Bill 2019. The stated objective of this bill is to amend the Environmental Protection Act 1994 to strengthen protection measures intended to improve the quality of water entering the reef. Protecting the reef is one of the Queensland Government's 6 priorities under our future state Advancing Queensland Priorities. The second item, Grazing and Grains Best Management Practice. The Grains and Grazing Best Management Practice program is a voluntary process that allows graziers and producers to benchmark their management practices against the best in the industry, identify improved practices and ways to incorporate them into their enterprises. The objective of the BMP program is to assist our industries to continually improve environmental management and economic sustainability, to enhance long-term profitability, and to improve catchment water quality. AgForce has been driving this program since its inception more than 10 years ago by an alliance with the Fitzroy Basin Association and the Queensland Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. There are over 3,000 participants in this program in some form. AgForce manages the BMP program's online assessment platform, self-assessment platform, and the website through which it is accessed. AgForce's position has always been that graziers retain ownership of all data they provide. AgForce has always ensured this individual data is protected and only used for the purpose it was provided for, an industry-led program of benchmarking and practice change. The BMP modules are out of date and no longer provide best practice approaches needed to optimise outcomes for producers. The implications of the new bill, secondly. What the Environmental Protection, Great Barrier Reef Protection Measures and Other Legislation Amendment Bill seeks to achieve. Firstly, the bill introduces new minimum standards to limit nutrient and sediment runoff in all Great Barrier Reef catchment areas. Secondly, agricultural producers are required to keep records which show that they are compliant with the standards. If a producer can show they are accredited under a recognised best management practice program or similar program, they will be deemed to be meeting the standards. Owners of the accreditation program may apply to have their programs so recognised. Owners of accreditation programs would be required to provide the government with details on each accredited producer. The implications and consequences of the bill in its current state, and in the state we believe it will pass the Parliament in. Firstly, AgForce considers that minimum standards impose hardship on agricultural producers. Secondly, the bill may require AgForce to provide data to the government, notwithstanding AgForce's commitment to producers that we look after the data in the grazing and grains BMP databases on behalf of graziers and grain growers. Thirdly, even if AgForce did not apply to have the BMP programs recognised, the bill allows the government to prescribe our BMP programs as recognised accreditation programs, which means AgForce would be required to hand over data related to accredited producers down to paddock level. 4. In addition, the bill gives the Queensland Government the power to require data from the agricultural sector, including information that would allow the government to determine where the minimum standards are not being met. This could be required across Queensland and not limited to what are currently deemed reef catchments. And fifthly, failure to provide information required would be an offence under the Environmental Protection Act, attracting a penalty of $6,527.50 per offence. Thirdly, and as described at the start, our two options, given that background, are as follows. As soon as the bill passes Parliament, which could be as early as tomorrow, the government could compel AgForce to hand over data for the government to use in compliance and control activities. This is data that producers have provided in good faith to improve on-farm practice on the understanding it would only be used for this purpose. Therefore, we only have two options prior to the bill passing the House. 1. Delete the database to protect the private data provided by producers who have partaken in BMP activities. Or 2. Don't delete the data and consequently expose the data of all BMP participants to the Queensland Government for compliance and regulatory purposes. Option 2, in our view, belies the trust that has been placed in us by landholders. Therefore, we have chosen option 1 with 2 small carve-outs. Of the nearly 3,000 enterprises that have had some form of involvement with BMP, 87 are accredited in the BMP program, and in some cases are using that accreditation in their marketing and branding. 2. Last year we introduced a consent form to allow producers to opt to have their data provided to government for other reasons. We are sending a separate note to these 2 groups, given their specific situation, and will be convening conference calls with them in the morning. We will be asking them individually what they would like to do, what they would like us to do with their data, and acting according to their wishes. What we are putting in place on the back of this: a suite of communications activities, conference calls and subsequent written briefings for members, talking points for staff and elected representatives, media announcements, etc., which will allow us to engage deeply with the membership, provide more detail and seek guidance from a broader audience about what next steps look like. Secondly, within the next 90 days we are aiming to launch a new best management practice program for industry under our natural capital umbrella. It will have up-to-date modules and content driven by the latest science and thinking globally, and will be driven purely by industry and like-minded partners. Lastly, what is at stake? Firstly, our data privacy and integrity as an industry. Secondly, industry ownership of industry programs. and thirdly, the reef and environment. The reputation of producers as responsible stewards of the land. In summary, AgForce Queensland is committed to protecting members' information and privacy. We are also deeply committed to improving the environmental health of Queensland, both within reef catchments and more broadly across the state. We are looking to work collaboratively with industry and community partners in developing a natural capital tool so Queensland's environment flourishes into the future, and we welcome your engagement with us. That ends the conference call, and as I said earlier, there will be a lot of information following this and strong engagement from AgForce as the peak body with members and broader industry starting first thing in the morning. Thank you again for your time at short notice tonight.